So back in the 90s, there were few things cooler than seeing your favorite rappers on TV or in cinema. From Ice Cube to LL Cool J, and probably the most successful example of all, Will Smith to name a few, the lane for rappers turned actor was widening. By the 2000s, you weren't using your clout as a rapper successfully if you weren't trying to cross over into that realm. Between movies, reality TV shows, hosting TV shows, and sitcoms, damn near everyone in the world of hip-hop at the time was attempting to cross over for that acting bag. Results were definitely mixed across the board, but if nothing else, we got a lot of moments that would never be forgotten, for better or worse.
What is that up smell in my crib, yo?
And then out of nowhere, it's like my stomach was just like, bitch, you got me.
Yeah, on my floor. Oh my God.
But one show that I forgot about over the years was Method and Red. Making its Fox debut on June 16, 2004, Method and Red was a very short-lived sitcom, only airing 9 episodes before things fell apart, leaving 4 of the intended 13 episodes unaired. More on that later. But in the early 2000s, Method Man and Redman were on fire. They had previously starred in How High, which wasn't the best reviewed and it didn't make the most money, but many of us, including myself, loved it, and of course it would reach cult classic status, even garnering a sequel that no one asked for damn near 2 decades later. Redman had the most infamous episode of MTV Cribs that same year, and they even filmed a pilot for their own hidden camera prank show called Stung. However, after MTV aired the pilot, the show didn't get picked up. So the next obvious step in their on-camera progression would be to have their own sitcom, right? Well, I remember back when I initially saw the previews for the show, I instantly assumed it'd be just like How High, but more of a spin-off, but maybe with like a TV-14 rating. But nah, the show wasn't remotely that. Instead, it was a recycled trope that I'm sure we've seen dozens of times before 2004. Hell, even Fresh Prince was initially the same premise. The fish out of water hood guy, or guys in this case, moving into a stuffy, stick-in-the-ass household/neighborhood where everyone is absolutely disturbed and disgusted by how the main character carries themselves, but I guess it would be more like if the Wayans brothers moved to Bel Air, because, you know, Redman literally reminds me of Marlon in this sometimes. And I mean, that's not a bad thing because we all know Redman is a funny dude. Method Man is more of the stoic one, but he's still pretty wild himself. These guys pretty much are portraying caricatures of themselves in this, and they are still very successful rappers in this universe and they go by the names that we know them by, hence the title. I think this was pretty much trying to be like, or not trying to be, but it was kind of like the Bernie Mac show where he was himself and there were some real world influences, but you know, it was an exaggerated version of his life, you know what I mean? Also, I'm not sure, but did cutaway gags start getting popular in the 2000s? This show does it from time to time, albeit not as much as Family Guy or whatever, but there are plenty of those random flashbacks in general. But before I get more into the show, let's briefly go over all the relevant characters, and I use the term relevant very loosely here. So I already mentioned Method and Red themselves, and just being straight up, Method Man is the main character of this show, no doubt about it. Redman is in just as many scenes, but he's more comic relief than anything. Method Man has more serious conflicts, which is saying a lot in this show because nothing ever seems too serious, the stakes never feel too high, and you just always get the impression that everything is gonna work out regardless. Method Man's mother Dorothy, who lives with him in the show, is played by Anna Marie Horsford, and that Wayans Brothers reference comes full circle. It's also funny because she played Redman's mom in How High. But anyway, she plays the typical no-nonsense, hard-working black mom that's also the voice of reason. She's always yelling at them to do shit, and she also always has back and forth with Redman, which is again just more comic relief. The main antagonist of the show is their white lady neighbor Nancy, played by Beth Littleford. She's a realtor and the usual anti-hip-hop you don't belong in these parts ass character. She has a husband who is an irrelevant pushover and a son named Skyler who is played by David Henry. His character is basically one of those suburban white kids who embraces hip-hop and drops cringy freestyles while his parents are all like, son, what the fuck? Side note, to any white viewers, is it really like that for white kids growing up who actually like hip-hop? It's always like that in TV and movies, and I'm wondering, like, do your parents always try to cleanse you guys of that? Do they, you know, give you a stern talking to about listening to hippity hop? Let me know in the comments below. But anyway, the kid ends up befriending Method and Red because of course two grown-ass celebrity men would spend a shitload of time with some random white kid whose mom hates them. Other than that, he's the typical kid who deals with bullies, has the constant desire to be socially accepted, and tries to get the girl or whatever girl is the love interest in that particular episode. Nothing out of the ordinary. And I guess the only two other characters worth mentioning are the two dumbass friends that round out their crew, Lil Bit and Dupree. Not really too much to say about them. Lil Bit is like a street smart ex-con with Lil Man complex, and Dupree is just a yes man. That's it. You know, one of those high-pitched, fast-talking sidekicks that gets told to shut up all the time because he's always doing the most. And of course there are other characters who pop up, but they're usually just there to be a plot point or for more comic relief, which is fine I guess. But yeah, everyone has their trope and they stick to it for the most part. And with that out of the way, let me attempt to half-ass do a brief rundown of this series and cover the 9 episodes that did air. Y'all bear with me, this is my first series review on this channel, so if y'all enjoyed this, hit that like button, let me know in the comments, all that good shit. Let's get it. So the first episode of this show basically establishes everything you need to know about the series within the first 15 seconds. There's a stuffy white realtor showing off property while mentioning how nice and peaceful everything is, and then the solitude is disrupted by our two protagonists. And that's it. That's the premise of the show. I think even by 2004 we've seen this concept many times. But anyway, you got two loud raunchy rap niggas getting established in a wealthy predominantly white neighborhood, and within the first 5 minutes or so they get threatened with eviction and are told that the homeowners association will take a vote since they violated the terms by being loud as fucking partying. Anyway, these guys end up befriending the neighbor kid who is the son of the stuffy white realtor lady, and they even pull up to his school and encourage him to swing on a bully, and he gets his ass whooped. Yeah, there really isn't too much interesting going on in this episode, but they do start to stress over potentially being evicted, and Red gets the idea to start giving out fruitcakes because white people love that shit apparently. More time passes and Meth gets discouraged and then gets a pep talk from his mom about not giving up. The guys then get the idea to see if anyone else is violating HOA terms. Their mission fails miserably, and just as they're about to get the boot, one neighbor takes a stand because Redman gave him a fruitcake and oddly enough helped him get his dad out the tub. As if that's not fucking weird, but whatever, and that singular vote saves the day. And it all works out. So that episode was predictable because of course we know they weren't going to get evicted. There wasn't really much else to make note of in that episode either, so let's move on. So, episode 2, it starts off with them talking to the neighbor kid who's chilling at their house, and it's his birthday coming up. And again, like, these guys just moved to this neighborhood. Why are y'all already this tight with this kid? Like, this is, I don't know. Anyway, so the kid asks Meth and Red if they could come to his party, but they ain't trying to do that, but they ended up promising that they would. Meanwhile, the guys have an impending visit from a journalist who apparently has the power to taint careers if he tells his readers that you've changed or gone soft. In the episode, they say he did this to 50 Cent and then his album sales tanked. I'd make a joke about the massacre here, but this show was damn near a year prior to that releasing. So anyway, you know they're gonna go over the top to show this guy that they're still goons despite moving to the burbs, but shit hits the fan. Then the kid's party sucks, and he goes to Meth and Red all pissed and let down that they didn't show up, but then they end up showing up. The journalist catches them and decides to write an article clowning them about how much they've changed and how they've gone soft, yada yada yada. But then they end up beating up the hired entertainment for the party, some fake ass Power Ranger Beetleborg niggas. Well, they don't really do it. Meth and Red just kinda talk and then sidestep the one guy who charges at them. Dumbass friend number 2 is actually the one who ends up scuffling, and then downtown Clowny Brown, who is the initial hood entertainment that Meth and Red suggested to the kid, shows up and proceeds to fight along with his clown posse. Method and Red basically end up getting credit for beating these guys up though, and that saves their reputation, and it all works out. Not too much to say about this episode either. I mean, it was okay, I guess. And that's being very generous. So episode 3 is basically about Mama Dorothy's birthday coming up, and Meth wants to actually give her a really good party, and Redman ends up promising to get Shaka Khan to perform. The party is literally within 48 hours, and Method Man actually counts on him to make it happen. Redman literally forgot that he promised that a couple scenes later, but then he actually ends up meeting with Shaka and gets her to agree to come, but then offends her by asking her to perform Midnight Train to Georgia, a song by Gladys Knight. Of course this can't fly because Meth's mom is so amped up about Shaka being there that she's walking around singing songs and wearing Shaka Khan shirts and all that shit just to remind everyone how much she's looking forward to it. To make matters worse, Method Man and Redman lose power to their home and are scrambling for solutions before the party. They find a temporary solution by running extension cords to the neighbors and literally siphoning their power, causing them to lose theirs. The op neighbor, who Meth is honestly being the op toward in this episode, catches wind of what's going on and has an electrician shut their shit down. Also, he's being an op because the neighbor lady is blasting Kenny Loggins and he has beef with Loggins. So in addition to Shaka Khan, this episode features Kenny Loggins. Basically, this is one of those episodes where everything can go wrong is going wrong, but they make a deal with the neighbor lady and get their power back, then Shaka Khan shows up and it all works out. This episode felt like a plot line for Keenan and Kel. More on them later. And also, y'all, I know that I'm not covering every single detail in every single episode, but we not trying to be here all day. Y'all get the point. Moving on. So I really don't have too much to say about episode 4. I mean, it's basically the most forced conflict I've ever seen. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I know there has to be conflict for the sake of having episodes, but this plot is just so weak. And it's also where I realized that Mama Dorothy is going to be a key component to these episodes. So Dorothy randomly has a cherry tree that she kept from back in the day and, I guess like replanted it on their new property. Right as she just so happens to be tending to it, the op neighbor comes by with a gardener guy and some legal jargon saying that the shit is prohibited. Meth and Red unfortunately weren't informed about anything when they moved to this neighborhood because they had the opportunity to be presidents of the neighborhood association due to it being a rotating position that changes monthly. They're informed about this by a lawyer and then claim their position. All they have to do is change the damn law so that the tree can be saved, but they do other shit. Getting all big-headed with the neighborhood presidential power. These niggas make a lot of policy changes and forget to change the one that matters about the tree, so the tree then gets massacred. Also in this episode, things get really silly. I mean, we know the show is silly, but sometimes it becomes a straight-up cartoon.
Is this it? Oh, the tree. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Aha, the golf course. Pimp juice. Doc?
I'm stuck in your memory, homie.
Wait a minute. You ain't getting with Ginger, is you?
I'm knocking them boots down right now.
What the hell?
So Meth gets the idea to switch his mom's tree with another cherry tree that he found, but his mom quickly realizes that it isn't hers and that her tree got decimated. And she goes from being pissed to giving a monologue about how long the tree has been around and in their lives, and then she immediately gets over it when she gets a cherry red Dodge Magnum. This episode was shit ass, dog. I'm sorry, but her recognizing that the tree wasn't hers, getting mad, and being cool all literally happens within a minute and a half, and then the credits roll. But hey, I mean, it all works out, I guess. Like I said, not too much to say about it. That was just a very, very boring and anticlimactic episode, but I don't even think with that plot point there could have been anything truly exciting, I don't know, let's move on. Episode 5. So Meth and Red want to invest in a sports arena because this show desperately needs plot points. Apparently Yao Ming is also trying to invest in the arena, and this ends up being yet another celebrity Method Man has a vendetta against. So Redman breaks the fourth wall and a flashback ensues. Apparently the guy's injured Yao Ming in the past, and so they hate him, I guess, because he's looking to establish the arena before them. I don't know, their beef with him doesn't make sense because they're the ones who caused the issue. But anyway, some BS side plot happens, and that reminds me of yet another trope I dislike in sitcoms. In the real world, your op neighbor is not about to come on your property in your backyard and whatnot to start shit with you. At least that's not how it was when I was growing up. But anyway, she's mad because her son slapped her on her ass. Which is weird on levels that I don't even care to go in depth on. but she says he did it because he was emulating what he saw Method Man do in one of his videos. So she wanted him to have a talk with her son. Again, what the hell, your son smacks you on your ass. That's some shit that y'all need to unpack. But, of course, Miss Dorothy pops up and she forces Meth to do it, so there's your B-plot. Also, Carmen Electra is here, and she's one celebrity in this show who literally isn't playing herself, but they're trying to get her to help them invest in the stadium. The episode is actually out of control because Meth tries talking to the kid but ends up smacking his mom on the ass because a fly landed on it. Then he ends up at the kid's school talking to the principal because the kid smacked her ass too, so of course bringing the rapper in makes sense. Then there's a fucking tarantula on the principal's ass, and Method Man does what literally no one in this situation would do and crush the tarantula on her ass with his bare hand. People actually see this, like they see the tarantula on her flat ass cheeks, but for whatever reason, they still act like Method Man is just going around flexing his manhood by smacking people on the ass. So all the kids saw that and they start slapping ass, and this ass slap thing makes Carmen Electra back out of their investment deal. Redman pulls a Marlin and rejoices in the fact that it's Method Man's fault instead this time. So anyway, some BS happens. Turns out Carmen Electra is like a double agent for Yao Ming or some shit. Man, I don't know. And he wasn't even in the episode. They just name drop him constantly and do that thing where they just show the back of a guy with a similar shaped head. Oh yeah, and the ass slapping thing with the kid gets resolved, so the kid slaps her on the ass and she beats the brakes off of him. I'm seeing a pattern here. This show literally resolves all storylines within like 1 minute. These endings feel so rushed, it's like they wrote it out without even considering the runtime, so the pacing gets all jacked up. But at least this episode was better than the one about the tree. Moving on. Episode 6 is already the best one so far within the first 5 seconds because they're playing slam ball. Y'all remember that, right? They had the whole setup and people who clearly aren't Red and Meth Duncan, but then it ends up being apparent that this episode is about to be focused on the op neighbors. Well, actually, they're cool with the husband, it's just the wife that's the op. But anyway, the guys got to deal with MTV to host a Miss Ghetto USA beauty pageant, which the guys pitched to them, and Miss Dorothy doesn't want a bunch of hoes at their house, which, again, it bugs me that she gets so much of a say-so and everything, but you know how that goes. So they see the op neighbor's deck, and then they figure they can host it there, but only after playing on the fact that deck sounds similar to dick for way too much time.
Deck? She's got a huge deck. She be packing mad wood over there. It's a deck. Neighbor lady's got a deck. She's got a big old brown deck.
That's right, she got deck for days.
Can you shut the fuck up?
They then go on and ask the neighbor lady and she said hell no. They then ask the husband and he says yes, but only after they pressure him about being a man and putting his foot down. So then the husband gets his loser ass kicked out and he ends up floating around at Meth and Red's house and is being extremely corny and irritating. Then a bunch of nothing happens. Then the husband guy fucks things up with all the contestants, and they end up going on strike right before they're supposed to go live on MTV until they get their respect or whatever. So Meth and Red hit the stage and stall the crowd, but they ain't feeling it. Meanwhile, Miss Dorothy goes to the neighbor lady to try to get her to retrieve her man, and I'm sorry, I just do not give a fuck about these neighbors for them to be getting this much screen time. Method Man and Redman end up apologizing to everyone while they're on stage, and the neighbor guy and all the ladies happen to come out in time to hear it, but before they can react, the neighbor lady shows up on the deck all half naked and everyone's going crazy for her. The ladies see her getting that attention and they decide to take the stage as intended. By this point, the credits already started rolling, so yeah, it all worked out. And that was another blah-ass episode. I mean, it had some okay moments. It's really just, I couldn't care less about peering into the personal lives of these neighbors. I mean, they're a part of the main cast and all, but I really just want to see Method Man and Redman doing cool shit and being hilarious in this show more. But let's move on to episode 7. So episode 7 starts with the guys hanging with DJ Quick, and that's pretty cool, but this is the episode where they introduce a love interest for Method Man because, you know, he's the main character and all. Her name is Brenda, and she's played by Elise Neal, and that's a celebrity I actually met before because she came to eat at a restaurant that I worked at back in the day. But that's enough info that no one gives a damn about. She just so happens to be affiliated with the neighbors because why wouldn't she be? And this plays out like a 90s movie where Method Man gets rejected, then he makes a bet with Redman that he can get her, and if he fails, he has to get Redman a car. So Method Man ends up downloading data about her from the neighbor kid and ends up agreeing to shit that he is legit not into, like hiking. Remember y'all, don't lie about what you're into just to get somebody to like you. I promise there are people who will vibe with you for who you are off top. Anyway, the neighbor kid brings Brenda's daughter to Meth and Red's house and once again walks in like he fucking owns the place. But Redman is proven to be W-mans for the kid because he sees that he's with a young lady and he tries to help him out. Nope, just kidding, he kicks them both the hell out. Back to the A-plot, Brenda actually starts to like Method Man because he's the main character. Meth then tells Red and the guys that he's really feeling her and wants to call the bet off. Redman then aggressively becomes L-mans and is kind of out of character. You think he'd be happy that his boy is happy, but instead it leads to him conspiring ways to break them up. So Redman distracts Method Man and starts telling Brenda some wild shit one-on-one. Like, dog, what the fuck? He tells this chick that Miss Dorothy worships the devil. And speaking of Miss Dorothy, she also wants to plot to split them up because Meth's life now has someone else in it, and she can't tolerate him making plans with Brenda over her. Everyone is unlikable as hell in this episode, I swear. But anyway, Brenda starts talking about having babies and shit. Meth ain't feeling it. He tells her he ain't feeling it, and then she says she knows and she was just testing him because this episode needed a reason to get this character out of here forever. She basically walks out of his life and Meth goes back to the streets. He basically immediately gets over the woman, so it all works out. This was one of the better episodes, but the way that the closest people to Method Man wanted to sabotage his budding relationship was odd. Actually, I take it back. This episode was ass chips. Let's move on to episode 8. Episode 8. So the dumbass friends invite the circus to these niggas' house without permission. Like, what the hell? But Tony Cox makes a cameo, so that's cool. Anyway, the white people are in their fucking house with no permission yet again. Apparently there's been some break-ins, so the op lady is pressing them. Also, Redman is losing his vision because he sits way too close to the TV when playing Madden. So he gets glasses. Then they find out that their TV was stolen. But considering that literally anyone can walk right in, they should be getting robbed daily. So they end up meeting with the op lady and all the neighbors and they form a neighborhood watch. The watch groups everyone up in two. Red gets paired with the baddie and Meth gets none other than the neighbor lady. Who saw that coming? And they randomly break the fourth wall in this show a lot, by the way. I might have said that already, but in this episode, people randomly get bleeped out and then they say, hey, that's not a cuss word, except for the one time when it is a cuss word. I don't know why that's a thing, but okay. So Method Man and Neighbor Lady have a neighborhood watch montage. Meanwhile, Red keeps smashing this chick and he gets rid of his glasses for some reason. Without his eyesight, he gets a stat boost to the rest of his senses though, and there's an audio cue that plays every time it happens. But Red's blind ass thinks he sees the neighbor kid stealing shit, so they interrogate him and his mom randomly shows up and they get into it. And then like a couple minutes later, she and Meth are ordered to go back to watch by Dorothy. And then they end up feeling each other oddly enough, like it's a really weird fucking thing that happens, I don't know. But they devise a plan to bring the circus back into the house so they could trick the thief into thinking that everyone was there instead of at home. The plan works out. They catch the thief, which is of course the celebrity cameo Tony Cox, and it all works out. To me, this is easily the best episode so far. There were actually some solid funny moments here at least, but that's not saying too much. And here we are at the last televised episode, episode 9. The neighbors show up and are actually let in this time. They're looking for donations for the neighbor kids soapbox derby competition, and Method Man gives these folks a fat stack of cash, and then the husband guy also asks if they can help a random kid build a car. They have to draw names, and Dorothy once again forces these niggas to do shit, and as a surprise to absolutely no one, they end up pulling the neighbor kid's name. On top of that, Dorothy ends up bringing up an old friend of theirs that they end up having to go visit in prison. So they just go visit the guy and then they have a flashback to show that this nigga was the dumbest fucking criminal ever. Anyway, this guy's name is Choo Choo, and while they're visiting, he asks them if they had been keeping tabs on his girl Rose while he was locked up, because apparently they said they would. Of course they didn't. They go find her like 1 or 2 scene transitions later and she's a pregnant stripper. They then devise a plan to keep this nigga in jail so he won't find out, because when he finds out, he'll kill whoever got her pregnant, and then that'll be his third strike. They interrupt this nigga's parole hearing and slide some info to get the shit delayed. This is like, what? Okay, anyway. So, they bring Rose to their house and then some shit happens. Then Choo Choo calls them and dumbass friend number 2 answers the phone and spills the beans, causing Choo Choo to literally tunnel out of prison on some Bugs Bunny shit because this show is silly as hell. So then the neighbor kid pops back up. I forgot the whole plot with the soapbox shit. Then Dorothy shows up and yells to advance the plot yet again. She is the primary plot device of this show 100%. Anyway, they get to the soapbox derby and then get on stage and announce that a killer's on the way. The dumbass Fran must have given the guy the latitude and longitude of where they be, because I have no idea how he found them. But anyway, Choo Choo shows up and sees his pregnant stripper girlfriend with the neighbor husband guy, and he then goes on the very, and I mean the most brief rampage you could possibly go on, before getting interrupted by the plot device. The entire resolution took 1 minute, it all worked out, and nobody died, and this is how the show ended. That episode was not the worst of the series, but again, that ain't really saying too much. Honestly, this show could have been great on a different network with different writers. Method Man and Redman have optimal chemistry, so getting them together on a project that people would actually enjoy should have been easy. I have an issue with the pacing the most because the climax and resolution just seems to be crammed into the literal last minute of each episode. And I'm not kidding, I mean the episodes are 21 minutes long and everything just starts to happen at least by minute 19. The climax and the resolution, you know, there's not even ever any kind of like epilogue or nothing. You know, we've seen plenty of shows do this type of thing way better. I've seen enough sitcoms growing up to know that even with that runtime, it's possible to pace things out so that everything doesn't feel so rushed. But the Method and Red show focuses on filling runtime with a lot of long and drawn out gags, and I mean more than a few times I started getting bored because certain scenes were just dragging. And you can only get away with that if what's happening is funny, but in this case it rarely was. And then they recycle shit in multiple episodes. One of their favorite things to do was put the guys in situations where they need to stall for whatever reason. How do you manage to do that multiple times within 9 episodes? I also got tired of how involved Dorothy was. I love the actress, but her trope of yelling at people to advance the plot got burnt out really fast. They literally even call her out on this in an episode by asking why she's always forcing them to do shit every week. Because, you know, the show aired a new episode once a week. Get it? It's like a self-aware joke, you know, about the lazy writing, but I always say being self-aware doesn't mean that you're being funny. You're just winking at the audience saying, hey, I'm right there with you, but that doesn't magically make it better, funnier, or acceptable. But anyway, the show ended on a sour note between the stars and Fox themselves due to creative differences. Method Man and Redman didn't like the idea of a laugh track, and that's one of the main criticisms that the show got from the viewers as well, and then they thought that the way that they were written would alienate their already established audience. In an interview with MTV in September of 2004, Method Man would say the following: "I'm not complaining about money, I'm not complaining about promotions, I'm complaining about where are they trying to go with these storylines. I'm a grown-ass man, I shouldn't be at a kid's birthday party on TV. Me and Redman, what we didn't realize when we came into this and tried to do this television show is that we already had an audience. We was bringing an audience to Fox. They had us feeling like we was going to broaden our audience. See, the audience we brought to Fox, they alienated them off top if you ask me. I'm not bad-mouthing the show, cause for real, if me and Redman wasn't on that show, it would have been great. The writing was not bad, it just wasn't for me and Redman. If Keenan and Kel was there, it would have been funny. But me and Redman, based on our past, our fans already see us as hardcore stoners or whatever. Then they look at the show and they're speeding stuff up, using sound effects like boing. They look at this like, what the hell? I'm looking at it the same way. I appreciate Fox for giving us the opportunity to do it, it just wasn't a good marriage. We had to divorce." And that was that. It seems as though the show is pretty decently reviewed according to IMDb, but I don't know who that actually consists of. Maybe y'all can let me know below. but in an article published by Variety a few days before the show aired, they compared it to Soul Plane, and that's honestly a comparison that I drew while watching the first episode. So I guess that answers my question about whether or not this concept was tired by 2004. But I only remember watching it just because I fucked with those guys, but the show was hella forgettable for a reason. Or I could just be a jackass who doesn't appreciate the art behind something, I don't know. But I do know that Fox is known for doing quick cash grab shows that don't make it to a second season, so it was basically doomed from the jump. I can't even imagine how a second season of this would have even gone. So if I could give this show a rating, it'd be like a 4 out of 10, maybe a 5 if I'm feeling generous. It just reeked of that Romeo show era of writing, but it wasn't a kid's show. Now, a Method and Red show on Adult Swim would have been a banger. But there you have it, folks. My quick little rundown of Method and Red. Do you remember this show? If so, what were your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below and hook your man up with a like if you made it this far. I rewatched all of that for y'all and created some quality background noise as a result. But seriously, thanks for your time, and if you want to watch this series, all the episodes are on YouTube, so go crazy if you have literally nothing better to do. And with that said, I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.